Hey folks, it's Tetragon, stalling for time to complete the Starbound video, but also bringing you more content for all my currently 25 subscribers. Today's video marks the beginning of a series, a Nuzlocke. No, I'm not going to be explaining it because you probably know what it is. On one of my favorite games of all time, Wizard101. Now, the astute among you may be asking, just how does one even do a Nuzlocke on a game that isn't Pokemon, much less an MMO? Well, boy, do I have an answer for you. A forum post from 2014. As you can see from the rules, there's a lot of restrictions similar to Pokemon's Nuzlocke challenge. However, we'll be tweaking things a bit. Rule 3 gets changed into solo everything because on this channel, I don't have any friends. Rule 6 goes from 6 spells in my deck at a time, excluding equipment, to only being able to use 6 different spells in my deck, along with any amount of copies in my deck of that spell. Maximum is 3. And spells provided by equipment are fair game as well as treasure cards, but before the end of the series I'll think of some limit on those. To keep things simple to understand, here's an example. The spells Firecat and Frost Beetle count as 2 out of my 6 spells total, even if I put 3 copies of each in my deck. Rule 9 is also completely removed because I simply don't know what they do. Rule 10 is also removed. We added a new rule where we can't buy anything for the bazaar. Now that we've got the rules out of the way, we can get into the actual suffering. We skip over character creation in the tutorial because I'm dumb and lost the footage, but nothing from our rules takes effect during the tutorial anyway. So to summarize, Evil Wizard is doing evil things and is a big, evil, mean guy, and we're now in a place called Unicorn Way, and we have to stop some evil invasion before things get out of hand. In order to do this, we, vicariously through our first protagonist, Corwin Cursetether, talked to Private Connolly, who was paid minimum wage to sit around and do nothing to stop the invasion currently going on. He says that Unicorn Way used to be pretty peaceful until Malistaire, the evil wizard guy from the tutorial, went and called up his spirit buddies to go protest in the middle of the street, and now, because we're just some kid that can use magic and we just showed up, we have to do the work of the entire Wizard City Guard. How fun! In order to do that, he wants us to fight and defeat 2 lost souls, because clearly only 2 of them equates to enough to scare the crowd of like 50 more away. And now, our first bit of non-scripted combat. We're offered a choice of 7 different spells, each with their own element, accuracy, and damage. The blue cards are the spells offered by our wand, the Wand of 7 Schools, and the cards marked with a balance symbol that are gray are spells that we, as a balanced school mage, are able to cast without equipment. So far, we only have Scarab, the starter spell, that can kill a lost soul with 1 cast with an 85% hit rate. Though the lost soul went first, he ended up fizzling, a magical way of saying the attack missed. In response, we send out our Scarab to go use Tackle on him, and even though he's a death type, he gets hit by it and dies. We do the same for the second lost soul, and we go back to Connolly to turn the quest in. He points us in the direction of Sarah Nightchant, who was literally standing a few feet away from him. Saren asks us to beat up some skeletal pirates because he's too afraid to do it, and so we trek off down the street and beat up 2 of them as they're just lost souls with a bit more health and they've seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. After doing that, we learn about that which rattles in the dark and head back to Saren, who sends us back down the street to talk to Lady Oriole, a seraph who is very good at magic and standing around in the middle of the world's smallest hedge maze. We also get a funky new hat from Saren, so that's nice. She wants us to free some fairies from the bone cages around town, and also to beat up 2 dark fairies to collect their dust. What's different about these fairies is that even though they should be Death School, they are instead Life School and have even more health. I send out my own Dark Fairy to fight the first one, then use a Scarab to finish it off. The second one goes down to a Thunder Snake and Scarab combo. We open the last 2 bone cages and then return to Lady Oriole, who tells us that the source of all the dark magic corrupting Unicorn Way is produced by Rattlebones and that he's hanging out in a tower, but she doesn't know where. In order to fix this, we head to our favorite Spooky Magic Tower GPS, Saren, on foot, because to make things harder, I'm not going to use a mount even though we just got given one, but not before stopping to fight a dark fairy for meager EXP, who damaged me enough to make me think it wasn't worth it in the first place. Saren tells us Rattlebones would likely be at the archives. That's where they keep the old magic books, by the way. So we head there. Rattlebone seems to be suffering from the unloaded model curse of the wooden golem, though he is eventually is able to free himself from the curse's clutches to exposit some very loud dialogue about a book that Malistaire needs to do dark magic stuff with, because some wizard kid didn't just barge in when the door was unlocked. We throw hands with him because of the temptations of a quest arrow, and our first boss fight begins. I start off trying to use Thundersnake on his friend, a dark fairy, but I fizzle. Thankfully, Rattlebones deals pitiful damage, and the fairy wastes her turn increasing Rattlebones' damage if he uses a life school spell. After taking some damage from Rattlebones and his friend, I'd retaliate against Rattleboy with a scarab, thinking I should take him out first to make things easier. With his dying breath, he makes me weaker against the next Death School attack. But, more importantly, he spits in his dark fairy friend's face by never making use of that increased life damage buff. Once he dies, I tank the damage from the Dark Fairy spell and use the Heartbeat spell to heal. I use a Scarab to finish her off on the next turn, and she fizzles her spell, so I go in for the kill and also fizzle my spell. The game hates me, surely. Finally, after that absolutely strange turn of nothing but fizzling, I finish off the fairy with one final scarab, ending the boss fight. Rattlebones leaves after the battle, dropping the book he was holding, even though it was quite literally the reason he was here in the first place. As I step outside, I see the dark magic and overall dreariness that was once there has now subsided, likely because Rattlebones was keeping things cursed with his ego powers, and now that he was bullied into submission by a magic child, his fragile ego, like his body, shattered, taking the magic with it. On the way back to Saren, I stopped to spectate another player's battle with a lost soul. After around 5 seconds later, I lose interest and promptly skip through Saren's dialogue about Rattlebones being defeated before he tells me to go talk to the Wizard City librarian, Harold Argylston, about the book I stole from that skeleton guy. Going through the commons, I make it to the library, where Harold also seems to be suffering from the unloaded model curse of the wooden golem. And, like almost everyone on Snapchat, he looks different in person than his profile picture. He tells us that we need to go talk to Headmaster Ambrose, because I'm everyone's errand boy and everyone is too lazy to do anything themselves. In order to get my mind off the sadness of my existence, Harold gives me a treasure card as a bribe. Treasure cards are just one use spells from different schools, and I'm allowing them because I think it would be cool. If you're a purist and think I'm wrong for doing this, feel free to leave a comment about it and I'll consider banning them. It also boosts engagement. After leaving the library, I once again walk through the rather quiet commons, seriously, it's usually packed, to get to Ambrose's house, to talk to him about how I soloed the entirety of Unicorn Way with what is effectively stupid recklessness and non-safe play. Inside the headmaster's house, he blabs about Malistaire some more while I fear for my life as his crystal ball, in a threatening manner, A-poses while suffering the unloaded model curse of the wooden golem. Apparently, while Ambrose deals with the book, I need to deal with my enrollment in the school, because apparently they just let new wizards solve all their problems when they aren't even educated yet. Great school system and nice places to live if you don't mind the evil invasions every other Tuesday. In order to make sure we don't tell the authorities on him, even though they're probably on his payroll too, Ambrose gives me the Elemental Shield spell, which is really useful and halves the damage of one incoming storm, ice, or fire school spell. And whatever makes the big ouchie numbers turn into smaller ouchie numbers makes me shut up. Ambrose then sends me off to see Mr. Lincoln because the opening act of this game is a series of kill this and then talk to this person. To keep me from getting too meta in the script, Ambrose then gives me a potion which heals me to full health and mana, the red and blue orbs in the bottom left corner, respectively, and makes me unaware of the fourth wall. However, because potions are banned in this challenge run, I stay aware of all of you who are deriving joy from watching footage of me working a shift as the average mailman, and then walk off to Ravenwood, where Lincoln is waiting. Once arriving, I'm greeted with the sight of not only Mr. Lincoln, but all 7 gym leaders, I mean magic school teachers, who've come to give quirky dialogue about why their school is cool. In order to keep things to the point, I'll give you a standard rundown of what they do. The Ice School is first up and focuses on defensive magic and is weak to Fire School magic. The Storm School is taught by a frog in a fancy suit and is all offensive, with the lowest accuracy spells and a weakness to Myth. The Fire School focuses on damage over time spells and is pretty lame in my opinion. They're weak to Ice School magic. The Life School is primarily based on healing, which, in a challenge like this, is pretty vital. That's why I'm likely not going to invest points into learning life spells because I'm an idiot. Life, like in real life, is weak to Death School spells. Balance is up next and is my preferred choice for this character. Taught by a British dog in a fancy brown suit, it's the middle of the road magic school that gets its origins from a mystical temple place called Krakatopia. Just like with non-mainstream things in real life, Balance doesn't even have a proper classroom because it's that unknown. Balance isn't explicitly weak to anything and focusing on enhancing other schools' effects. Next is the Myth School, which focuses on summoning creatures to aid you in battle and is taught by the edgiest person known to man. It's weak to Storm School spells as well. And finally is the Death School, taught by a student after the actual professor, Malistaire, destroyed his chunk of the school and went all evil bad guy mode. They focus on leeching life from enemies and are weak to Life School spells. Now that's finished, the Balance Professor yaps about Krakatopia, where ancient lizards threw together a bunch of magic and made balance magic. And like I mentioned, balance isn't exactly well known, so the teacher is teaching out of a suitcase. Arthur Weathersfield, the professor who I forgot to name drop, says he will call me back at certain levels to learn new spells from him. The other professors' names I don't really care about, but you could have paused the footage to figure out their names. He lets me learn the Scorpion spell for free, which does more damage but costs more pips, the little white orbs that I get one of every turn. Scorpion costs 2 pips, which means I need to wait 2 turns before using it. I immediately add it to my deck to use in future battles, and talk to Mr. Lincoln about to finish my official enrollment in the Wizard School after dealing with their problems. After speaking to Lincoln, I take a second to admire a floating wooden golem who was having a nice conversation with Blossom, the wise mystical tree of the Life School. Instead of going to Ambrose like the quest asks of me, I instead stop by the ice school to try and learn one of their spells, because I want to try a defensive approach to make sure that I don't die and have to restart this entire run. To start with, I learned Frostbeetle, the level 1 spell, to have some varied elemental damage, even though it's only like 2 elements without equipment. And then, after that, I finally go to Ambrose, who gives me a healing spell in the form of Pixie, which heals for 400 and is absolutely essential for this run, in addition to formally enrolling me in the academy. Unfortunately for me, the total of 7 enemies I defeated throughout this episode weren't enough to fully fight back the darkness, and so there's more enemies to fight, and because I, a child, did some killing and talking to NPC quests, I am now the designated savior of Wizard City. Man, I don't know if Malistaire, someone who's a master of Death School magic, will ever defeat me, but enough inflating of my ego. I get sent back by Ambrose to talk to Sergeant Muldoon in Old Town, who tells me that 3 streets are now all out of whack, those being Triton Avenue, Cyclops Lane, and Firecat Alley, of the Storm, Myth, and Fire schools, respectively. We are then rudely interrupted by a pet, which Muldoon tells me to work together with to find out what's going on in the funky tower behind it. I take a look at my inventory and look at my pet I can't use, named Scruffy Brutus, and because his model hasn't loaded in, I effectively received thin air. Going into the tower, I see Penny Dreadful, who's probably a reference to something like most things in Wizard101, and who also lost to a reskin of a basic enemy in the form of Old Judd, the guy who used to look after the tower before he died. He doesn't like how I wandered in to unknowingly stop his plan to turn all pets into zombie pets, so we fight. The fight goes rather smoothly, with him using weak death spells and me responding by casting Elemental Shield, a spell I got earlier, to save up pips to cast Scorpion. After throwing 2 weak spells at me, Old Judd accepts his fate and passes his turn as I cast Scorpion, and instead of a Mortal Kombat fatality, I summon a very large scorpion which smacks him with his claws for 180 damage, finishing him off. Afterward, Judd reveals that he threw away the key to the pet kennel where he keeps the pets hostage, and Penny suggests I command my pet to go and find the key, and I control the thin air that was once my pet to grab the key and return to Penny Dreadful. But it is revealed that the key was instead for the locked door leading upstairs, and that Judd put a combination lock on the door because it's a magical wizard game and they have combination locks. She says she tried to guess the combination, but 000001 wasn't it, and neither was 000002, so it's apparently hopeless. I used my thin air pet to talk to the other pets who, instead of recoiling in fear at the massive thin air speaking to them, revealed the code was, in typical comedic fashion, 000003. The knowledge brought on by this reveals Scruffy Brutus's mortal form, and the sheer power over all existence that he possesses is frightening enough that I unequip him and to maintain the fabric of reality. Penny tells me to go talk to Muldoon and tell him that the job's done. He gives me 3 quests for each of the next streets that are out of control, and I ultimately decide on Triton Avenue for my next excursion. But that's for the next episode. Join me next time for when I go explore Triton Avenue, and remember to, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and have a good day, folks. Also, I'm sorry for stuttering. This is like my first time doing this. Alright, bye.